Alright, so I just got back from seeing Nosferatu, the 2024 remake, in the theaters, and yeah, pleasantly surprised. I'll go into why I liked it after. I'll give a quick summary as usual, so spoiler alert if you haven't seen, either of the Nosferatus that have been made already, or any of the Dracula films that followed the book, or read the book from like over 100 years ago. But yeah, spoiler alert, you've been warned. So we have a young real estate agent named Thomas who is sent by his boss to the Carpathians to sign off on a purchase with this Count Orlok, who is, they say he's got 1 foot in the coffin, which is kind of funny, or 1 foot in the grave or something like that, because it's Nosferatu. But anyway, I mean, I think you knew that at this point, so huge spoiler, sorry if you didn't know. Anyway, yeah, he's sent to this little town out in the middle of the mountains by horseback, yet from Germany. So that's a hell of a trip. Apparently it's a 6-week trip is what they say, which makes sense because, yeah, I mean, I guess he couldn't get any flights. Stupid. So yeah, he goes there and there's a stop in like this little gypsy camp or whatever. Romani people, whatever you want to say. They call them gypsies in the movie. I don't know if that's politically correct or not, but anyway. It's a camp, and they're all kind of laughing and thinking he's crazy for wanting to go to this castle to see the Count. And this one old woman who shows him to his room is like, in her own language, like, "Don't go there, dude. Like, that ain't good. Nothing good comes out of that place." And well, needless to say, the next day he goes. But that night they end up they take his horse, and there's like a naked virgin on its back, and I don't know if they're doing a sacrifice or something, but anyway, he wakes up for the entire town to be completely gone. So that's great. They took his horse, so he's got to walk all the way up the mountain by foot, which evidently takes a full day. So by the time he gets close enough to like even see the place, it's dark, and out of nowhere he sees something in the distance, and like bells and chains clanking and stuff, and it turns out that there's a carriage coming to pick him up with no one riding it, and the door slowly swings open by itself. Needless to say, it's been a hell of a trek. I guess he's just like, all right, I'll get into the creepy carriage, and I see the castle, we're good. He arrives, the Count right away is like, "You're late, dude." Yeah, you're supposed to be here like a while back, or a while ago already. And he's like, "Yeah, sorry, and then the Count's like gone suddenly. He's like, "What the hell?" So he goes up the staircase that he was following the Count up, but the Count rounds the corner and then he's just gone. Anyway, he comes to this big room. There's a fireplace, very dark, and whatnot. Oh yeah, there were some wolves chasing the carriage too, or whatever, and I think that was supposed to represent like the vampire. Anyway, yeah, gets in there, there's a fireplace, sits down, and Orlok is basically just saying to Thomas, like, "Listen, bud, we gotta sign this deal right now." And he's like, "Can it wait till the morning?" He's like, "No, I want to do this now. You're late. You're gonna do basically what I say at this point if you want to make the sale." So he's like, "All right, let's do it." The whole time, Orlok they said he's eccentric, but he's a bit more than eccentric. Like, he seems to like almost teleport. Like, he'll look and see him and look down and then look up and he'll be gone, and he'll be behind him pouring him a glass of wine over his shoulder. Like, it's some creepy shit for sure. Back at home, his new wife, Ellen, who had been she had visions as a child and whatnot, of this thing, but it's not alluded to exactly the extent of everything. But now that Thomas is gone, she's having like seizures and like showing signs of possession. So the doctor that is taking care of her seeks the opinion of this professor von Franz, played by Willem Dafoe. Hell yeah. I love Willem Dafoe, by the way, in case you didn't know. Part of the reason I want to see this movie so bad, well, I mean, it's Nosferatu, horror classic. And, I mean, Willem Dafoe. I mean, he hasn't really been in a movie that I can think of off the top of my head that I didn't like. I'm sure there's one or two, but they're usually pretty solid. Anyway, whatever. So Von Franz comes and looks at her, and he's like, "Why is she tied up? Why'd you give her ether? Like, what are you doing? Let her, like, be." And he's like, Oh, yeah, and she's staying... Sorry, I forgot to mention, she's staying at Frederick and Anna's place, and they're basically friends of Thomas and Ellen. So while Thomas is on the road, Ellen is staying with Frederick and Anna. Or Anna, I don't know how you pronounce it, but whatever. So they're kind of keeping her company and whatnot. But anyway, shortly after him leaving, she starts having all these episodes and whatnot, and they've tied her to the bed and, like, ether and all that stuff. Anyway, like I said, Von Franz is like, no, I need to, like, observe her actions, like, even if she's, like, violent and moving in a way that could, like, hurt me or herself, I need to see this to be able to explain, to see what this is. Anyway, he does his observation, and non-ethered anymore, she kind of gets possessed and, like, starts talking in this, like, low, gravelly voice very briefly, and essentially Von Franz is like, okay, well, he pulls them aside. He's talking to Frederick and the doctor, and he's like, okay, so yeah, she's possessed by a demon for sure. Like, definitely possessed by a demon. Oh, by the way, Von Franz he was actually the professor that taught the doctor that had called him, but he was, like, kicked out of his school in Sweden or whatever for, like, getting involved in studying, like, the occult and, like, alternate things like that. So he's kind of disgraced. But anyway, good thing they called him, because he has a little bit of knowledge on this stuff. Anyway, so that's the case. Back at the castle, Thomas it's the second day, and he's kind of getting the wiggies a little bit, and he can't find Orlok anywhere. And he has, I think it's like a nightmare or a vision or something of finding his coffin, or when he tries to escape, and then he wakes up and it's like what's real and what's not, right? But he notices he has, like, an injury on his chest, like little puncture marks. So unlike vampires in most media, instead of so that's the noise it makes, obviously, right? Anyway, he's been being fed on, but he's kind of like, what is this? You know what I mean? So he's freaking out and he wants to leave. The initial day when he wakes up, he can't find Orlok. All this happens, and then he wakes up. So was that a dream, or did that actually happen? Anyway, turns out he's kind of having, like, fever dreams or whatever, and Orlok meets with him the next day and is like, okay, so you're not doing well. I insist you stay until you're healthy. It's not a good omen to travel when you're sick or ill or injured or not of right mind or whatever. He's like, no, I must insist. I have to get back to my wife. Like, I've been gone 6 weeks. Or I will have been gone 6 weeks if I leave today. Like, every other day is an extra day that, you know. Anyway, he's like, no, I insist, and then basically vanishes into the darkness of the castle. And he's like, no, and anyway. So he gets fed on again, but I guess he wakes up this time and sees everything going on, or his vision is that, and he wakes up in his room, and there's, like, wolves in his room, and he goes onto the ledge, and the wolves are lunging at him, and he slips off the ledge and falls into the water below, assumed dead. But he's not, for one of the gypsy people find him. Some woman finds him, and they nurse him back to health with prayers and all that stuff. And he's not fully recovered, but he takes a horse and he starts heading back to Germany, because, I mean, yeah, I'd want to get home too at this point. Anyway, the transaction is made, the deed is signed, Count Orlok is now basically set to live in Germany. What have I done? Not a great thing. Meanwhile, Thomas's boss, who had sent him here in the first place, is now stark raving mad. So he's kind of like the Renfield of the Nosferatu, except instead of eating bugs, he's eating, like, birds and rats and, like, any kind of small animal. I'm sure he eats bugs too, but, like, they show him doing that. And it doesn't stop there, because it goes into, like, he'll eat human, which he does at one point, sort of. But that's neither here or there. Anyway, Nosferatu's on the boat, And there's a whole other movie I have to review, by the way, called Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is pretty neat. Basically about the boat trip. So anyway, they don't go too long on the boat, but anyway, the boat crashes, all these rats come off, and it's like a plague ship, essentially. People start getting hit with the plague, which is a supernatural result of Orlok coming to this town, it turns out, or at least von Franz thinks so. And I think he's correct. That being said, Orlok comes to visit Ellen, who had a really bad dream and was staying in the same room and bed as Anna for that night, because she's like a little bit got the Wiggins. Okay, I'm skipping ahead again, sorry. So Thomas finally does show up, and she stops having these seizures and convulsions or whatever, because it turns out, what is explained later, is that her love for Thomas had like overpowered an ancient agreement that she had made with this creature many, many moons ago. I don't know if they were essentially married or whatever, but they were bonded for whatever reason. And that was like her curse to bear. Sorry. But she met Thomas, and Thomas made her feel like she's worth living again or whatnot, and so it kind of overpowered. But like the fact that she married Thomas is, it turns out, what awakened, wow, English, right? Woke up Count Orlok. He sensed, okay, there's like, our bond has been severed and replaced with this random dude. Like, what the hell are you doing, girl? So that's what woke him up. It started his reign of terror. So that's fun. It's all her fault. Too bad. Anyway, so he's there, and he's really not doing well, though. But he's kind of sort of under the thrall of Nosferatu a little bit, but not entirely, because of the recovery that he had taken or been given at that gypsy camp, but not fully recovered, so he still kind of has a little bit. So he like snaps it at Ellen, and it's like, get off of me, and like starts talking weird, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna go sleep with Anna because this is not groovy. Anyway, she does, and they're like talking and fall asleep. I forgot a major thing. So before Thomas left to go to the Carpathians, Ellen gave him a locket and put like a little bit of her hair in it, and he'd given her lilac so the smell is in her hair or something. Anyway, Orlok had asked to see the locket and never ended up giving it back, and had been using that as a link to Ellen, I guess. Somewhat of like an alchemy type. You know, I have this essence of this person that's like literally a physical part of her. I can convey my presence onto her from wherever I am, based on the fact that I have this little bit of hair here. Anyway, so yeah, so she's goes to sleep with Anna in her room. They have 2 kids, by the way. I don't know if that's important or not, but yeah, Frederick and Anna have 2 kids. Frederick is kind of stressing out because of the whole thing that happened with Ellen, but she's good now, and it's all good. But Orlok appears in the room, and only Ellen wakes up, not Anna. And he basically tells her, you got 3 days to either submit to me and take it easy to this dipshit over here that you married, or I'm going to be killing everyone, and on the 3rd day I'm killing him. This is day 1, by the way. So you got 1 night of not him dying, but others will, and then if you don't submit, he's toast. So she's like, what the hell? I'm not submitting to you. What are you talking about? Anyway, next day comes. Yeah. He holds true to his word. Anna and Frederick are in their bed, and he puts this sleep spell on Frederick, saying basically, don't wake up. And you hear the 2 little girls screaming from the other room. And Anna wakes up and is like shaking Frederick, like, dude, babe, wake up. Like, someone's fucking with the kids. Anyway, he's not waking, so she runs off herself, and the screaming stops just before you get to the door, and there's like a crunch sound. And she opens the door to see him dropping one as he's drinking the other one. So, killed the children. and then basically kills her. That's good. Frederick the next morning finds all this. Obviously, shit's been going weird ever since Ellen's been there. He's blaming her. Like, this is horrible. Has a funeral and all this stuff. Very sad. He's shaken up, obviously. He snaps at her. They end up talking him down, and he, like, is fully aware that Orlok is Nosferatu now. He's completely aware that this is a thing that's going on. Meanwhile, the boss, Thomas's boss, who had set up the transaction, had like a pact with Orlok to bring him here or whatever, with promise of something. But once Orlok found Ellen, he kind of didn't need him anymore, and so he's kind of disgraced. But yeah, he like escaped from the asylum he was being held at because of his like mad ramblings about he's coming and all this stuff by biting a guard in the neck and like ripping his flesh, kind of vampire style, out and escaping into the night. And basically, yeah, he goes to find Orlok, and Orlok is like, yeah, I don't need you anymore, dude, so fuck off. Anyway, so they Frederick had sent Thomas and Ellen home at this point, and Thomas is still not in the best shape, but he's able to function. He's determined. He's like, okay, she tells him everything. Like, basically, I had a pact with him. I, like, lay with him and everything, and all this creepy, gross stuff. But then I found you, and I fell in love, and blah, 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 blah. And then there's a weird scene where she, like, gets down on her knees and is like, you could never satisfy me like he did, and whatever, and her head's, like, right by his crotch. And then they have sex because, like, why not, right? And she's like, haha, excellent, let him see this, and let him know that has no thrall over me anymore, I found real love, etc. So, I mean, I guess there's probably a better way to, like, convince him to put out, but that's fine. Either way, whatever. So yeah, now it's the third night. That means basically if she doesn't submit, she's going to lose her husband, essentially. So at this point, Thomas says, I'm not letting anyone hurt you. I'm going to kill him myself. So him and the doctor and von Franz and whatever, I think Frederick isn't there. So they go to the grave of Anna and the two children, and they burn it. But then Thomas is like, shit, this is a distraction. Von Franz is like, yeah, like, sorry to do this to you, but she's the only one that can kill him. Like, I'm not certain that, like, putting a stake through his heart or anything is actually going to kill him. It has to be her. She's the only one. And he's like, you son of a bitch. He takes off. This was from a crypt that they assume that they found his coffin in, but when they open it and they stick the spike down before they can even see who it's in, it ends up being his boss, like the deranged guy who Nosferatu's like, I don't need you anymore. Anyway, he dies. They burn that place down too, and there's rats everywhere, and yeah, good times. All this is going on. Orlok appears, Ellen calls out to Orlok saying, like, basically, okay, like, I don't want you to kill my husband, just come to me. We'll make it a thing again. We'll get back together to save my current partner, which is like, that sucks. But he does. And they smooch, which is really kind of creepy, but anyway. And then they do, I guess, the vampiric equivalent of sex, where they're both naked, but he's just drinking her blood. So that's fun. Anyway, she coaxes him to continue drinking after he stops to go back and drink more, and he's so into it that he doesn't realize the sun's coming up. And alas, he drains her of blood, and she does die, but the sun comes up, and he, like, dies, and, like, parts of him, his face, like, melt in blood, and so it was pretty cool. Not, like, complete melt horror, but, like, a pretty good way to show a vampire being killed by the sun. Like, he doesn't just burst into flames, he doesn't turn into dust or whatever, he just kind of, like, deteriorates a little bit and melts, and yeah, it's creepy. Very well done. And then as he's dead, she slowly passes away because she's lost basically all of her blood at that point. And that's the exact moment that Thomas shows up and sees her dead with him dead, both of them naked, him on top of her. It's like, but he doesn't give a shit about that. He's lost his wife. He knew exactly what she did based on, you know, conversations with, like, when he realized what's going on with von Franz, and a little diversion there, and that's essentially the end. It's not a happy ending by any means, but Orlok is dead, and unfortunately so is Ellen. Boom. Roll credits. Alright, so cinematography, that's a word. Cinematography of this version of the film, excellent. A+ on that. Beautifully shot. The flow of the movie was great. It did not feel like an over 2-hour movie. It was very good. It had me hooked the whole time. The acting was excellent. I was immersed the entire time. The music was great. Everything about it, honestly, kind of exceeded expectations. I kind of held a little bit of a high bar because, I mean, again, Nosferatu, like the original 22 silent film, is like excellent, like the epitome of what horror was in that genre, or in that decade. Sorry. And then they did a remake, I think, in the 80s or the 70s, which was also really good. It wasn't a silent film, this one, but it held the bar pretty high too. And yeah, this other outing here is great. Like I said, the way they did it was kind of old school horror, where they don't rely on jump scares. There was like one or two, but most of it was essentially just creepy factor, like using the shadows and the creepiness of Orlok himself and his like abilities and all that, and just overall ominous feeling throughout the whole film. It was great. The castle scenes were amazing. Everything was great. So should you see it? Yes, you should. What am I going to rate it? I'm going to give it 9.1. Yeah, 9.1. Very good film. Highly recommend it. Was thoroughly impressed. There you go. Yeah, that's the 2024 Nosferatu. I don't have much other to say than everything was solid, and you should absolutely see it. So, do it! Alright, peace. Bye.